Welcome to the third episode of Coconut Chats, everyone. We hope you've enjoyed our earlier two episodes. If you haven't heard them yet, make sure you check out our Facebook page and the links are uploaded there. I'm here again with my friends Shomita and Chris. Hi, ladies.
Hello, Harita.
Hello, everyone.
Today we've chosen a topic that a lot of Indians talk about, the institution of marriage. So, first things first, what is the meaning of the term marriage for you? Shomita, let's start with you.
Okay, so marriage is a big word. I will start from the beginning. As a kid, I thought marriage is a festival where we put on our best clothes and get to eat some awesome food. Honestly, I was not ever too curious about why suddenly a man and a woman are doing all those rituals. I guess I just assumed that when you grow up, you got to perform these rituals. So, as I was growing up, things became more clear. Oh, sorry, I don't know if it became more clear, but definitely the definition of marriage changed. The definition I learned from my parents and my religion is marriage is a yagya. So, in Hinduism, yagya is a ritual sacrifice with a specific objective. In this case, two human beings promise each other to spend their life with utmost loyalty, devotion, and dedication to each other. I think the meaning of marriage is more or less same in almost all religions. Hindus believe, at least the section of the Hindu society I come from, they believe if you keep all your promises and perform all your marriage duties truthfully, your virtue will be as good as that of a sage. So you will be one step closer to moksha. So when my
Mm.
mom was explaining all these to the 23-year-old me, I quite freaked out. The best way the best way out I could think of at that moment was to call my manager right away and ask for an assignment outside India. Jokes apart, now in my 30s and being married for 4 years, if I have to define marriage, I would say marriage is an intimate version of friendship where you share yourself with your friend. Well, that's me. Let's pass on to Chris. Chris, I know you are yet to get married. So, when you think of marriage, what comes to your mind?
What you pointed out was very interesting, Shamita. You've gone a bit into religion and, Vedas and all that spiritual and religious part of it. But when I think about the term, I would like to point everybody's attention to what was the very first or the first draft of the concept. So if you look into very early definitions, it states that marriage is a culturally recognized union between two people, which is also accepted socially and religiously as well. That was something that we learned on very early on in our individual traditions. Maybe our ancestors were familiarized with that version, right?
Mm.
But
Yep.
now that meaning has taken on various facades. Like now when you look at the definition of marriage, it's no more culturally, socially, and religiously. It's taken on words like economically and legally and financially. So now marriage is more of a become of a transaction where you need to sort out your grounds and you need to make sure that, all right, I'm going into a unison, but I need to keep my ears and eyes open in case if this falls apart tomorrow. Am I sorted? Am I secure? So now marriage is looked at a more of a three-dimensional form of system, and a lot of people I see are more or less adapting themselves to this modified definition of marriage. And also, a lot of friends I talk to, the definition they have in their minds is marriage is that legal document, the legal paper they sign to have legitimate sexual relationships with the partner. So this is also a kind of definition I have come across quite many times while we discuss marriage among our friends, peers, whatever. So this is my perception, my understanding. Of course, in addition to what Shomita has said, and I think we'll hear about more from what Harita has to share on it. Harita, what's your take on it?
Yeah, I agree with both of you that, it's changed a lot over the years. Back in the day, probably when our parents got married and then when our grandparents got married, the term marriage didn't mean so much about the financial side of things, but it was more like, well, everyone gets married. Of course you have to get married. You know, there was no question about it back in the day. When you're 20, 25, you get married. And especially being Indian, back in the day, um, you know, if you're a single 25-year-old Indian woman, people start asking why you're not married yet. What's wrong with her? Or is she too busy
Yeah.
studying or career? Whereas now it's really changed. You know, I got married when I was 30, and I still have friends that are in their 30s that are still dating, still single, definitely not married. Um, so it's changed a lot over the years, but for me personally, the term marriage means building a partnership with someone, um, marrying someone that you see yourself spending the rest of your life with, you know, for better, for worse, as they say.
Yeah.
Um, my own parents have been married for 36 years. They actually had an arranged marriage, so they didn't even really know each other when they got married. 36 years later, they still made it work. They actually worked full time together for over 30 years running a small business. So they couldn't even go to work to escape each other if they'd had a fight or anything. So for me, like watching that growing up, it means, you know, working through the thick and thin together. Sometimes you have more bad times than good, but basically just never giving up and making things work
Yeah.
and watching you keeping out for the good times to come, I guess, just working together for that. That's my personal side, and that's what I see in marriage. Like that's my aim in my own marriage as well.
That's wonderful to hear.
Yeah. So I guess that leads us nicely onto our second conversation. Why do you guys think people get married? And Shamada, you could probably use your own stories here about why you got married.
Yeah, so in my case, more than why I got married, it was like how I got married. So in my early 20s, I genuinely believed that I am not going to get married. Everything looked so complicated. I thought if I get into this bond of a lifetime, I won't be able to do stuffs independently. What if I wanted to go somewhere and the other person didn't like the idea? Not liking the idea is still all right, but what if he stops me from following my heart? What
Yeah.
do I do then? There were so many questions. So then this concept of arranged marriage kind of freaked me out to the fullest. When I was around 24, my mom literally blackmailed me emotionally and forced me to open an account in Bengali matrimony. As I have mentioned earlier, I left Kolkata at when I was 22, and I was mostly staying in Chennai back then. So whenever I used to visit Kolkata, my mom would force me to meet few guys she would have found in the matrimony site, and this went on for around 6 7 months. Then I was so fed up, I kind of made her sign a bond. I used to maintain a diary
Really?
back then, and it was a very important piece of document for me. It was nothing legal, but it was of much importance to me. So
Yeah.
I wrote down a few clauses there, kind of agreement, and then we both signed it with the date. And as per that agreement, my parents won't bother me for next 2 years for marriage, and I will look for a suitable guy for myself. And if after 2 years I am still unable to find someone, we will resume the uh, arranged marriage drill. That was the idea. And
That's such a good idea.
yeah, all I was doing at the time was buying myself some more time because I knew my employer has already filed a H-1B for me, the US work permit, and the process will take for about 1 year. In India, it sometimes takes a bit longer for the H-1B process to get over, and that's a lottery we all know. So I may or may not get the visa. So if I get it, I will be out of the country and escape
Mm,
marriage. And if I don't, I'm trapped. So either way, I just took a chance. And that was all in my mind when I was making that agreement with my mom. But
mm,
destiny took its turn. So after 1 year, I found someone, I was in love, and I also got the visa. and I had to
Mm.
leave country. So marriage was still out of question at that time, because even if I had stayed back, I won't have got married to him right away. We were just starting to know each other. When I went away and I got some time, some peaceful time with myself, I thought that, okay, what I really want at that moment was to be with the person I love. So I can go back to India and do that, but my parents and the so-called society won't be in good terms with that arrangement until I actually marry the person. The more I thought about the seriousness of this commitment, the more I freaked out. I was scared as hell, like what if I fail? Then gradually I thought that there is no point in stressing myself with all these. We'll worry about failing when it actually happens.
Mm.
So let's just be happy for the moment. And surprisingly, my boyfriend agreed to this as well. Usually, I have seen guys freaking out more than girls, but he was fine with it. He said, if our parents want us to get married, let's just get married. At this point, it solves ours as well as our parents' problem. So there is no point in worrying about tomorrow. So that's how we ended up getting married. Honestly, we didn't think through that the whole marriage idea at that time. We just went with the flow, and we are in a continuous process of figuring out things for ourselves as it comes. Yep,
And
that's
sometimes that's the best way to get married, isn't it? Because a lot of people think that everything in their life changes after marriage, but the
yeah,
only thing that really changes with marriage is that now you've got a legal document between you. You're still two human beings that are constantly trying to get to know each other for the rest of your lives. So, yeah, it's a good way of thinking that you did.
yeah, that's what. Like, I don't feel much difference from before marriage and now. We are just living like two roommates sharing the space. Yeah, so I don't feel much difference. How about you girls?
You guys are permanent roommates, aren't you? For life.
Yeah, kind
Permanent.
of, yes.
For me, I think, if I have to take it to the ground level, marriage is basically, confirming to the fact that human is a social animal. We probably, at least this is how we used to think like probably 10, 20 years ago, that we probably can't live our life by ourselves. We need a companion. So the basic purposes, if I have to highlight it, again, as Harita mentioned, I'm yet to get married, so that realistic window is not open to me yet. But the mindset that I can harbor while I'm getting to acclimatize myself with that process is marriage entails a lot of commitment, a lifelong promise to trust each other, a lifelong promise to stay with each other. And obviously, you have a lot of other securities. You have legal, financial, these things have just cropped up like anything in the 21st century. And obviously, if you have the same religious belief, so you guys can just polish each other up. But for
Mm.
me, what I would like to see is I would really like to have a meal. I would really like to share a meal with the person on the table with whom I have a similar mindset. Because marriage is take away finance, legal, although they are very important, but at the end of the day, it is all comes down to if you are able to strike that heart to heart conversation with that man or the woman or anybody for that matter, right? If you can't talk to that person, there is no life into the relationship. So that's something that I look forward to in my partner, that whatever fields we come from, the purpose I would get married to is just to have kind of a heart to heart conversation, share a different perspective about life. But
Yeah.
here I want to raise something, because now that I'm going through this process, I have seen a lot of friends. More than why people want to get married these days, the reasons are more for why people don't want to get married these days. And the reasons are exactly the opposite of what I just mentioned.
Mm.
Commitment being the main pillar on which marriage is based is again the main reason people don't want to get married in the 21st century.
Exactly right.
Commitment to them is a task. Patience to clear things out to them is a task. They will happily lead 10 shorter relationships rather than get into one long standing relationship. And that in itself speaks a lot about, what is exactly wrong in the systematic fundamentals our generation is kind of thinking on, or how they kind of breed this thought of marriage into their minds. So it's a very gray zone out there. Having said that, the purpose of getting married is being kind of hoarded over with the purposes of not getting married. People are enjoying their single life. I am enjoying my single life as well, but I'm not as confused, if I have to use that word, as 10 people out there. If you take a survey, the most common reaction you will get is, oh, I don't want to commit. I'm very scared
Yep.
of commitment. So that's something I think we can talk about in later part of the podcast. But to me, the main purpose would be to have that person with the same mental connect, the emotional connect. Everything comes later, and then
Yeah.
build up a life and build the bridge as and when we go on that.
Yep. That's very true. Yeah,
What
I think
about you, Harita?
even for me, I found, whenever I talk to my parents about why they think getting married was important, my mum, she's a New Zealand-born Indian, but she says all the time, oh, well, back then we didn't have a choice because everyone got married back then. Like it was so black and white 35 years ago. And now, as time's gone on, just like you said, and also just like I said earlier, I have so many friends in their 30s that are not married, they haven't been married before, and they're just dating or they're single and going on dates with people and seeing how things go, as the saying goes. And there's no urgency to settle down as much now as there was 1 or 2 generations ago. Um, Everyone has different priorities in life now because now careers are a lot more important to a lot more people, both men and women alike. Whereas in the past, a career was something a man had and a woman just had a job for the side income or just to keep herself busy. A career wasn't as important to the woman in the past. I'm generally speaking here, but that's how it was known. Whereas now, a lot of people think, well, if I get married, I might have to put my career on hold because there might be expectations out of the marriage or from my partner's family or to have kids, and all of that type of stuff is going to put my career on hold or is going to put my life on hold. I might not get to travel as much as I want. I might not get all the freedom I used to have as a single person that wasn't in a committed marriage. So I think because people's values are changing as time goes on, people's importance to get married gets lower and lower than what it used to be in the past. Um, for me personally, I've always wanted to get married, ever since I was young. Staying single in my 30s and 40s was something I never thought would happen to me because I always thought, oh, well, I'm going to find someone that I can travel with. I'm going to find someone that I can share hobbies with. In my mind, getting married never meant that I would have to give up my job or my hobbies. I always thought I'm going to marry someone that shares all my interests so that I don't have to give anything up. But in fact, I have someone that I can do all the things I enjoy with. That was always my way of thinking. And I think it's also because I was raised that way. I was never raised to think, okay, well, when you get married, then that's it. Within 1 or 2 years, you need to have a kid, and then you need to do this. Like, I was never raised in that way where everything's just a checklist. I was raised by parents that always said to me, well, when you get married, you both help each other with everything and you help each other grow. And that's also what my parents did in their own marriage. So I saw it for myself. So for me, I always thought, well, obviously I want to get married because then I have that one person that I can share everything with instead of doing one thing with one friend, something else with another friend, and not having any one person that completely knows you inside out. Um, the other thing for me is I want to have kids sometime in my life, so getting married is a good start for that. Um, and I think just because I've seen how successful my parents' marriage is, they've worked through all the ups and downs, I thought, well, that's what I want as well. Someone to just share every experience in my life with. So for me, getting married was always important. I think, to be honest, I got married a bit later than I thought I would have. If when I was 20, if you'd asked me what age I want to get married, I think I would have said 25 to 27. But things don't always go as planned. But, end of the day, if you have a goal, you work towards it, and sooner or later you get there.
Yep.
Yeah. So I guess,
And
how do most people, or how do you think most people go about finding a partner, and what are your personal experiences with the latest trends in dating, like Shadi.com and Tinder and the like? Um, Shamita, we'll start with you again.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, yeah, mine was a love marriage, and well, love marriages are more common in my family. My parents had an intercaste love marriage in their time, which was quite a big deal back then in India, and coincidentally, mine is also an intercaste marriage. And in fact, my all my uncles and aunts on my father's side, everyone had love marriages. So I would say, although we are just like any other family where not everyone is very fond of each other all the time, but that one thing we all have in common. In my case, I met my husband at my workplace. We hated each other initially. I remember once I complained against him to my manager because I thought he's not paying attention to a particular assignment. And I remember the next morning during the rush hours, when he saw me coming towards the lift, he deliberately pushed the close button on the of the lift to piss me off. Yeah, and then one day we just realized that we are too comfortable with each other. Although the feelings were mutual hatred, it was still kind of liberating. I can just be myself with him. I never had to worry about how I look or behave because I knew he would hate me anyway. I seriously don't know what exactly happened and hate turned into love, but now if I have to think back and figure out, I can only say that you only hate a person you love. Maybe that's the thing. So, yeah, okay, that's a bit about how my relationship went. So let's hear it from you, Chris. How is the sorting going on for you?
Before I actually move into the real-time scenario of how it's going for me, I would like to pick up from something Harita mentioned that she saw her parents work out their marriage for 36 years, right? And so for me, I've seen my parents work out their marriage with a lot of ups and downs for 33, 34 long years. So moving back into their time was a time where mostly they were arranged marriages, right?
Mm,
Their parents used to talk to parents, minimum one phone call or two phone calls between the groom and the prospective bride. That's it. Parents decide the alliance. And then they used to have the marriage, they get married, and then they stick to each other through thick and thin. And those are the marriages we still see going strong. After 3 decades, they're still going strong. A
yep.
lot of fights, a lot of disagreements aside, they're still going strong. They've raised kids, they've done everything on their part, right? Now, cut to coming to 21st century. So I've been on these dating sites as well as matrimonial sites, although personally I don't see any differences now because both of them have turned to more or less the same thing. Nowadays, I think people are very confused because when you log into a matrimonial website, right, all you see is lots of words, lots of pictures about a person, but they're all virtually coming to you. So you can't see the person in real time. So whatever you have to form an impression about, you're forming them from something that's written to you. And in 1 minute, you have access to more than 10,000 profiles. So
Mm,
that's like confusion right there. You're confused for choices. You're spoiled for choices. It's very similar if I ask you that go get me the best sunflower in the middle of 10,000 sunflowers, you will be confused at the end of the day, right?
yep.
And then another thing, when you talk to people nowadays, there is no involvement of parents in the initial stages. They leave it to their children, which is to me very objectionable because the child who's getting onto these sites for the very first or the second time, they won't have that experience to sort through a person as much as the parents would. But I don't know for what reason they just leave everything onto the next generation to figure that stuff out.
Mm,
So now comes the very important stage is getting to know each other. And this is something I personally am very confused with because whenever a person tells me, oh, let's just, keep talking, we need to get to know each other, this is a sham. You can never know a person inside out. It takes a lifetime to fully understand a person. This happens even in love marriages. For now, there are so many people who are coming out of a broken love marriage just because the person they used to have an affair with before is a completely changed marriage after marriage because people change all the time.
yep.
So this promise right here that, oh, we need to get to know each other is completely an abstract umbrella. I don't know where this term has come from. And then on top of it, the questions women are asked under this umbrella are just obscene to the nature of anything. I don't want to get into too many details of what questions are being asked, but those questions serve no purpose of getting to know a person for a lifetime. To me, it just appears that they want to dig into your past life. What did you do before you were trying to get married? How was your relationship status and all that, which to me is irrelevant when you're trying to get married, right?
Yeah.
And I think all these sites, cutting a very long story short, I would like to stress on this importance of technology, which leads to infidelity. I mean, I was reading a census which says that right now in 2017, 1.36 million people are divorced in India, which is like 0.11% of the total population. So, and most of the divorces or most of separation cases are coming out because people are cheating on each other. And this is all because of so many dating sites. You don't have access to your partner's phone. You have no idea what they are doing behind your back. So I don't know which scenario we are living in right now. On one side, we are talking about commitment. On other side, I'm having access to 10 profiles. I'm having access to 10 of these sites, and I can just go about doing anything I want, to the point, and I shall not elaborate this on any further, to the point I have been asked if I would be open for an open marriage as well. Initially, I had no idea what this meant. And then when I asked the person, he said, oh, just to keep the spark alive between the husband and the wife, we get into a mutual agreement for an open marriage wherein you're allowed to see people outside of your married life as well.
Yep.
To me, honestly, and this is just my personal opinion, please don't take it otherwise. To me, this sounds like blasphemy. Marriage is committing sacred vows to each other. You take vows to each other, right? And on top of that, if you're seeing other people outside of it knowingly, to me that's blasphemy, straightforward. So right now I don't really know what people want from marriage, from their partners. A man I talked to was 37. At 37 he's saying he's not sure, he has too many things to do in life, he's not rushing. So long
Well,
story
what
short,
is he doing on a dating app then if he's not interested in dating as the definition of the word goes?
good question. A lot of these people evaluate you on dating sites. They'll talk to 10 women at the same time. Again, to me, unethical. 10 people at the same time. And then they'll evaluate the best person who wants to go on hike with them, who wants to probably have a casual relation before getting married. And I am very old school. Like, to me, at this point of date of time, I appreciate how our parents got married. I would really love to have that process followed today, anytime as well. This modern technology is not doing us any good. I'm sorry to say that, but I can see that happen real time.
Yep.
A lot said about my life. Moving on to you, Rita. What about you?
I think me and you can talk about this stuff for ages.
Forever.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, this modern technology stuff like Tinder, Shadi.com, all the other apps that are out there, Go Fish or whatever it's called, and all those other ones, they were all created with good intentions. They were created for people to date people that they would not ordinarily meet in day-to-day life. Also because these days people are so busy with work and so busy with things in life that 20, 30 years ago people weren't as busy with. So it was created with good intentions by whoever made the apps. But the way people use the apps is not how they were intended to be used. So like, what you say about Shadi.com and Bharat Matrimony and all those actual matrimonial websites now being used the same way Tinder is used. I don't think the creators of Shadi.com thought the users would just use it for one night stands and just to filter out 20 people and politely reject 15 and only meet 5.
Yeah.
But it's the way people use it, because so many things in our generation have changed to our parents' and grandparents' generation, because we have so much freedom in general life that our parents didn't have. We have less expectations from our parents. Like, My mum got married at 20. I think if she was single at 25, everyone in the family would have been talking behind her back. Whereas now, when you get married when you're 20, 25, people say, oh, she got married really young. So now people's ideas and values have changed, and because of that, we have been raised differently to our parents. I'm talking about we as a general
Yeah,
generation,
yeah.
25 to 35-year-olds. And because of that, it rubs off on us. And so we have all this freedom where we think, oh, I don't need to get married yet. Oh, no, I don't like this person. I don't need to get married to them. I can just break up with them and date someone else, because we have all this freedom, which back in the day, that freedom was not even an option. Um, so I think that's why these apps don't get used the way they're intended, because, you can't control, you make one app, you can't control how 50,000 people use it. Um, and even, with Tinder, like I found, or actually as a side note, I met my husband through Shardy.com in Melbourne. So I have a, I guess, good news story where we started chatting to each other on Shardy.com, and because we were both living in Melbourne, it was easy for us to meet face to face, and then from there we started dating. So I think if it wasn't for Shardy.com, I don't know if me and him would have ever met, because Melbourne's quite big, and if you don't have mutual friends or anything, it would be quite hard to meet. So
Yep.
in that case, me and him met each other through that, and we've been together for 4.5 years. But on the other side, like before I met him, I have used Shardy.com before, and I've used Tinder. And Tinder, like, you can just talk to anyone about it, and they're like, oh, that website, that app doesn't have, like, decent guys on it. It's just the impression people have on it. But on that app, there will be one or two good fish out of the whole pond. You just have to use your common sense and search around properly. You can't just fall for the first guy that chats to you. You have to actually use your common sense and try to ask each other proper questions. And I guess if you pay attention to the questions you get asked in return, you should be able to figure out if that person is actually serious in getting to know you or just in it for fun. I've been to a few weddings where the couple getting married met on Tinder. So there are good news stories out there, but there are a lot of bad things that happen as well, because people's values of marriage have just changed so much over time. Just like I said before, getting married is not so important for everyone anymore. It's still important for a lot of people, but there are also a lot of people that don't value marriage as a very important thing to achieve in their life, which is probably why, you come across these 37, 40-year-old guys that have never been married before, and they are on these apps, but then they seem so confused, like, oh, I don't want to get married anytime soon. And then they're all waffly when you talk to them, and you can just sense the confusion when they're
Yeah.
talking. So I think it's just really confusing, like when I tried to explain dating apps to my parents don't even understand how it works, because this type of thing didn't even exist back then. Back then it was like, if you wanted an arranged marriage, your parents talk to their family friends, and they find someone that you might like, and
Yeah.
there's no waffle, stalling, and all of procrastination stuff in the middle, because no one did that back then.
But having said that,
Yeah.
Harita, just very quickly on what you mentioned, that at 40, if you're confused, I believe everything has a proper time and age to be done in life, right?
Of
We
course.
are
Yep.
not living for 100 years. So even at 40, I'm confused for something that I probably should. I'm not saying I should do, I probably should do by 35, 36. And
Mm,
there has to be a valid reason why you're confused. That you're stuck at work, you're not getting that promotion, but life moves on.
mm,
And the value of marriage has changed. That doesn't mean we start taking people for a ride. So
of
your
course.
personal beliefs have to be very strong, right?
Mm,
So it's a big puddle out there. There's nothing black or white. As I said, it's a great zone. But we can keep talking forever. Let's not bore our audience anymore on this.
Yeah, before we move on to the next section, I
yeah.
just tell one story. Yeah, I had a friend. He was dating a girl he met on matrimony site. They even introduced each other to their parents and they were about to get engaged. Then, one morning, the guy calls me and says that I don't know what happened, but this girl just broke up with me and she isn't telling me any reason, any proper reason. So he asked me that, will you please call her? Sometimes girls are more comfortable talking to another girl, so why don't you ask? So I called this girl, and then this girl, okay, these are her exact words, more or less, what she told me. She said, he's a nice guy, but when we were planning a life together, he said we will be splitting our expenses. I don't want to get into a life where I have to worry about splitting household bills. And I was like, okay, I think that makes sense. You just saved my friend by telling me this. So that wasn't something I was expecting from a girl who is in the same profession as me and who is working and she's just saying all these things to me. It was
Mm,
quite strange. And there was another similar incident. It was long back in Chennai. In this case, I knew both the girl and the guy. They were my friends. So they were dating with each other, and suddenly the girl says she wants to break up since her parents were looking for a match for her. We initially thought that maybe her parents are forcing her, so why not we just talk to her and see if we can help. But when we asked her, she said, love and marriage are two very different things. I can love, but I cannot get married to a guy of same age as mine. The guy should be few years elder and he should be earning more than me. Only then he will be able to take care of me and I can relax. And this she said in front of the guy she was dating and all their common friends. And I would say it was one of the most humiliating moments I have ever been a part of.
mm,
So, yeah, so it's not just guys, that there are like girls who will shout for equality, liberty, and all fancy words, and at the same time, they will assume it is their right to expect that it is only the guy's responsibility to earn and run the family.
mm.
Yep.
So basically,
Yep.
they're just dating the other person until they find someone better as a time passes.
Yep.
Yeah, like I have that reminds me of a story of someone I know. She was with her boyfriend for like 3 or 4 years, they were quite official. They used to go everywhere together. Most of the community knew they were together. Um, she was Gujarati and he was Punjabi, but I mean that doesn't really matter. Um, and he went to India for a holiday with his family, I think. And she obviously stayed in New Zealand with her family because she thought he'd just gone on a family holiday. And then he rings her one day from India and says, I have to break up with you. I've just got engaged to a girl in my hometown. And she was left thinking, what? We've been together for, more than 3 years as boyfriend, girlfriend. Now you just got engaged. And I just remember thinking, like, what? Like, I can't even imagine, you have so much trust in someone you've been with for 3 years. Just like that, your parents have introduced you to someone, and you could have said no to your parents. But no, they've introduced you to someone, you agreed, done, engaged. Now you're getting married in a few months. That's it. The relationship was over, like just that quickly by phone. Um, and it's just, and this story was probably only 7, 8 years ago, and it's just, mind blowing.
Saying no to your parents in an Indian community stands for another episode altogether. Let's
Exactly.
think about
Yep.
it.
Yep. So I guess that probably actually brings us really nicely to our last question, actually. What are your expectations or your ideal expectations of your partner and their families?
Yeah, so if I have to start, I will say knowing a person and living with the same person are two very different things. You cannot love everything about someone. If that's happening to somebody, then he or she is perhaps the luckiest person alive. But yeah, what I have seen so far, what keeps a marriage going is to learn to coexist with this mix of likes and dislikes. I won't say compromise because I don't believe in compromise. I think it leads to depression. I
Mm-hmm.
think giving each other space is very important. For example, in our case, if I have a dance performance, I never force my husband to come if he is busy. Usually, the timing clashes with his cricket match, so neither he forces me to come to the ground and cheer for him, nor I force him to come to the event and take videos. So, what I have seen around me is one person's hobby and choices are usually dominant over the other, and gradually the other person gives in and tries to fit into his or her spouse's choices.
Yeah, that's
I
compromise.
Yeah, I don't know how it works. Maybe I am overthinking, and when someone gives in, maybe they are fine and happy to be that way. Not everyone is same, but in my case, me and my husband are very different people. Fitting into each other's choices and hobbies will mean one of us will have to create a totally new version of ourselves, and that
Mm,
is something neither of us want. We chose each other for being who we are. So, as per my experience, we can happily coexist without compromise, and at least that's what we are aiming for. We never know what's down the line waiting for us. Yeah.
yeah. Chris, what about you?
Um, quickly reiterating something I said earlier throughout the podcast was marriage to me is like building a bridge. So you take it as it comes, you build the bridge and you keep moving on. And I don't have a mountain load of expectation from my partner, but just a few things that I want to bring out on the table. You can take them as my earnest request or an appeal, but something that I've noticed over the years that are like deeply wrong somewhere. So one thing, each of the partner, let's just make it very gender neutral. Each of the partner needs to come in with a head over the shoulders. So you're entering into a new relationship, you need to exactly know what you have signed up for. No person is the same as Shomita mentioned, but this is a whole new different life you're signing up for. So keep that in mind.
Mm,
We both the partners need to have primary responsibility towards the family that they are building up with each other. That is their most immediate family. Parents are always there, no disrespect to the parents, but the immediate family is what you build up with your partner, your kids, whatever, they are your immediate family. So responsibility, understanding of that dimension has to be there. It's very important.
yeah.
Another thing, something that's very, very prevalent in the Indian society, and I see a lot of my friends suffering from them, I have to put it out. Please don't take me otherwise. As a man, for us as women, we can very easily balance our parents. We can put our mothers aside. We can give importance to you, your mother, your father. We have been seeped with that mentality somewhere. But what I see is for any XYZ man, it becomes very difficult to balance that equation between his mother and his wife. For example, if there is a clash, that man loses his senses over who to kind of give preference to. And
Yeah.
9 out of 10 cases, the preference, biased or unbiased, goes to the mother.
Mom.
Yeah. My request to you all listening to us is please evaluate the situation and support the person who's right in that argument. It could be
Yeah.
your wife, could be your mother. It's not necessary that your mother always is 100% right. She might be wrong sometimes. You have to understand that you're married. She might be acting out of emotions, but your wife is the newest addition to your family. She needs your support all the time. So
Mm,
please make a balanced decision. Don't swing by the mother all the time. We know how emotionally boys can be close to their moms. So are we. But if we
yeah.
can lose an entire household, we detach ourselves from our parents and come to you guys, we expect that minimum balanced decision making from you. And the
So true.
last thing, since I have seen this question coming to myself, is I can guarantee that I will support my partner in his professional personal growth 200%. So tomorrow if my partner says I'm going on an assignment to US or Europe, I'll be the happiest person. I would expect that same happiness from the partner because all of the women today, they work very hard to get there where they are. So
Mm,
that is the least bit of recognition they want from their partners. Please don't stop your partners from excelling in their professional lives. That's all I have to say in this part. Moving on
yeah.
to your.
Yeah. I think This is the thing with always going last, is you've both said things that I completely agree with already, and then I don't have much of my own stuff to add. Like what Shamita said, you should never expect your partner to change when you marry them, and that goes both ways, because obviously, if it's a love marriage, I'm saying here, and also arranged, you marry someone for who they are. So then if you try to change them after marriage, then you're trying to make them into someone that you didn't marry, really. Um, so my number one thing is you should never try to change each other, but you should always try to better each other. So whether that means motivating each other to get that promotion at work, or motivating each other to get a better job if you see that they're unhappy in their current job, or motivate them to pick up a hobby they've never done in their life. You can motivate each other to change in a way that's going to make each other better and happier.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
don't try to change the essence of who that person is, because then who have you married? That's one thing for me, and I think because I wouldn't say I'm not a very independent female, but I am very headstrong and opinionated. I like to have my job, but then I have like 10 hobbies under the sun. I do volunteer work. I've been doing dancing for half my life. And if I married someone that said, okay, now that we're married, you're not allowed to go to dance class anymore, I'd be like, but that's what I do as my hobby. I'm not really a sporty person, so I like to go to dance class. How does getting married change the fact that I can't go to dance class anymore? Like, my mind would just never understand that. If my husband or my husband's family tried to stop me from doing the things I used to do before marriage, because then you're making marriage into a bigger thing than it really is. Your life doesn't have to change that much if you get married, as long as you've got that mutual trust and growth together. Um, Also compromise in the sense of, if you have to move countries or move cities because of one person's job or one person's family or whatever, because in my case with Hammond, we met in Melbourne because I was living in Melbourne for 5 years. I'd moved over basically by myself. My family all stayed in Wellington. So we met in Melbourne, which is his hometown. But then about a year and a half ago, I said to him, I want to move back to New Zealand. I was going through some things and my family were all still back here. To him, moving to New Zealand is a brand new country. He's lived in Melbourne from the day he was born. But we had that mutual thing where he could see that I needed to move back to Wellington. We don't know for how long, but he could see, I had to go. So he said, okay, fine, I'll come with you. So we had that thing where I didn't have to just move for him. It's not, the wife didn't have to do everything that the husband wanted to. We had that mutual thing where he basically moved to New Zealand for me. We both had to get new jobs and everything here. I didn't have a job secure here, but Wellington is basically my hometown. So for him, it was a new country. So, I guess that's breaking some of the stereotypes, because a lot of us have been brought up to think, oh, well, if you are talking to a man from overseas or dating someone overseas, well, without question, you're going to have to move to the country he lives in, because he's never going to move for you. A lot of us and a lot of our parents were raised that way. If you're talking to someone in America or something, for example, the first question people ask is, are you prepared to move to America for him?
Yep.
And sometimes, I personally haven't been through that, but I know some people that have. They've moved from Australia or New Zealand to America and the other side of the world. And I always think, why has that question even come up? Can't you and him decide where you think the two of you will have a better future? That could be the country the female is from. But it's always, are you prepared to move to where the man is from? So I think that's an expectation that probably comes from the family more than the man. It probably comes from the parents, because they traditionally think, well, the wife always has to move or do whatever the husband needs to do in life, so the wife has to adjust her life according to him.
Yep.
Yeah, and then the other thing with the expectation of each other's families, like, I think, well, the parents especially need to learn to accept who their child is with. Because at the end of the day, you know, I've married my husband. I haven't married his parents. But with the Indian community that we live with, you know, you think about family all the time. The parents need to think, well, my daughter or my son is happy with this partner, so they must be good for each other. So we need to be happy for our child that they've got this partner. And parents need to learn how to accept their child's partner into their family. It's always expected that the woman becomes part of the husband's family, but no one really talks about the husband becoming part of the wife's family, which again seems really unequal to me, because you both signed the marriage document, right? You're both in this marriage, whereas for me, like, my parents accept him, and they treat him like he's their third son. Oh, not third son, third child, second son, because I have a brother. You know, but I also know that not all parents are like my parents. I know some people think, oh, she's the daughter-in-law. They always emphasize the in-law. Oh no, well, I already have a daughter. This one is my daughter-in-law. And I don't know if it's intentionally or unintentionally, but they always treat you a little bit differently to how they treat their own kids. So the thing with the parents is, I think they need to learn to genuinely accept that person into their family, which with Indian culture is like a huge other topic, which we could actually talk about for another whole podcast. So, you know, that's in my ideal world, but I think we all know not everyone's life fits the ideal world. So we've been talking about this for ages. Like, I think we've had a really good conversation about so many broad topics about the institution of marriage, and, you know, how our Indian tradition plays into it as well. I know I can certainly see from this discussion that marriage is a lot more complicated than meets the eye. You know, there's so much to think about when it's a decision that actually affects your whole life, because, you know, when you enter marriage, you don't enter the marriage thinking, oh, well, you know, I can divorce this guy in 5 years' time. You enter the marriage with the best intentions. You know, certain things might happen down the line. You don't get married on your marriage day thinking in your mind, oh, well, I can always divorce if this doesn't work out. So it's a lot you have to think about, right? And I guess there's never any right answer, but you just have to follow your heart, and you have to commit to growing with the person you've married, because like you said, you're changing every single day of your life, whether you're married or single or anything. Any last words you two want to add?
No, I think we covered it all.
I think I just have one thing to add. You summarized it very beautifully, Harita. The one thing that I want to add is, to any newlywed couple or people who are contemplating marriage, please have that window of patience open. Like, a lot of conversations can be solved very amicably if you talk it through over the table. You don't always have to exit out of the relation just like that. So have that patience, have that understanding, and that will is required to stick with that person, no matter how good or bad that person is. I think that's something we all need to kind of analyze and introspect. Patience is something that's running out of this generation.
Oh, for sure. Yep.
And as Seema auntie mentioned, marriages are breaking like biscuits, which is very, very true.
Good old Seema auntie.
Good old, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway, we hope you've all enjoyed listening to this episode. It was a bit longer than expected, but as you could tell, the three of us have got a lot to talk about on this topic. So, as always, feel free to share ideas for any future podcast topics with us, or your feedback on this podcast. Share your feedback on our Facebook page. We would love to read your comments. We've also got our email address, coconutchats@gmail.com. You can send an email to us at any time. Make sure you follow our Facebook page, which is Coconut Chats, and like and share our page with your family and friends to get the word out there. We've also got all our podcasts on YouTube, but we also add the YouTube link on our Facebook page if you're not sure how to find it. Bye for now, everyone.
Bye.
Bye bye.